Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I would like to show you how you can make your wallflowers perennial and have them flower year after year. So these wallflowers here I've had since last September. So they're about 1 year old now and they've finished flowering, and the way you can tell they're finishing flowering is at the end the flower spikes. What happens is you just have a couple of flowers at the top and you get lots of these fat seed pods starting to form. As soon as it gets like that, you can start cutting it back, getting it ready for next year. You can leave it until this stage when there's no flowers at all, but that's leaving it just a little bit late. It's best to get it just as there's a few flowers left on it. And the reason for that is what the plant wants to do is it wants to set seed, make as many new seeds as it can, and then will die back naturally. But if you take off all the seeds, it will actually keep going and last for another year. So I'll just set this up here on this wallflower so you can have a closer look, and I'll just talk you through it. So the wallflowers, actually the ones that we use is from a native wallflower that grows in southern Europe. It grows in very rocky climates and it actually lasts more than 1 year. But what we do is, because it flowers so well and it doesn't really survive that well if you don't look after it well, we just kind of give it a new, we get a new one every year. But as I say, you can make it last year after year. So what it will naturally do in the wild is it will flower, set lots of seeds. It will then really weaken the plant because it set loads of seeds, and it might come back next year, might not come back next year. The ones that we have, because we've got so highly bred and there's such big flowers, takes even more energy out of the plant, and it's more likely to die and not last for a few years, because the ones in the wild normally do last a few years, to be honest. So what you need to do is start cutting it back after it's finished flowering. So I'll just take a piece off here just to show you what the seeds look like. So this is what the seeds are like. After the flowers are finished, you'll get these quite fat seed pods forming. The ones that remain very thin, like these ones, they probably haven't been pollinated and they're not going to turn to seeds, but all these fatter ones here, they'll just get bigger and bigger and they'll produce hundreds of seeds. And when the plants, what happens is if you don't cut these off, the plants put all their energy into the seed production at the expense of the actual plant, and it just kind of kills itself by putting all its energy into seed production and not actually growing anymore. So basically all you have to do is cut all the seeds off, and once all the seeds are taken off, the plant will then refocus its effort onto growing again, and it'll grow quite large over the summertime and you'll actually get a much bigger plant. So I'll show you here with this one. So as I say, this is just finished flowering. So what you'll need to do is, you'll see here you've got your flower spike, and then you can cut it back to the first set of leaves to get rid of all the flowers. But what tends to happen with wallflowers is they put on so much growth over the summer, you really need to cut further back, otherwise you'll get a very leggy plant. So it's best to cut back to about this kind of height, so just leaving about a third of the plant. So you basically want to go around, look at every single shoot that's come up, and you want to cut it 2/3 of it back, so you've only got 1/3 of the plant left. And so you could just cut off the seed heads, but what tends to happen is you get a lot of growth on the top. So for example, this one, you get a lot of growth up here, and the stem will be a bit spindly and it will fall down and it will actually snap off. So it's best to cut it quite low down to prevent that from happening. And you can be quite tough, as long as there's still some green leaves lower down the stem, you haven't cut too deep. So that's about right. So you can see there now, that plant's quite stocky. It can handle a bit of wind now because it's positioned quite nicely there, and it hasn't got too much growth. So as I say, what that'll do now is it'll put on quite a lot of growth. What you should do is just give it a little bit of feed, but because it naturally grows in a rocky condition with dry soils and poor levels of food, is you don't want to give it a lot of feed. If you give it too much food, one of the problems that can happen is it will grow too fast and you'll have a really big straggly plant and it'll just be destroyed as soon as winter comes, because the winds and the bad weather will just rip it apart. What you want is a small stocky plant that can survive those kind of conditions. So where every leaf joins the stem, that's where you should expect branching. And I should be able to give you an example of that, because last year I did prune these just as I got them, just to make sure that they were a bit bushier. So you can see there's one central stem, on this plant, and I nipped it out at this point here. And after I nipped that out, it grew all these side stems. So basically what you're doing with cutting off the flowers is you're going to produce the same effect. So this one stem here will then produce lots of side stems, which should then look like this. So you can imagine from this one plant you should get, every one of these stems will get as large as this entire plant is at the moment. So you will get a much bigger plant. It will grow quite vigorously over the summer. It will take a little while to get going because it's been quite stressed, putting all the energy into flowering and now putting all its energy into seed. But once you take the seeds off and it starts to get its energy back, it will put on quite a strong growth. It will also grow throughout the winter and a little bit and also in the autumn. It does slow down quite a lot in the winter because it is a little bit too cold for it to really grow much, and there's not enough light, but as long as it doesn't have really hard frost, it will survive. So you need to try and keep it quite cool, because if you live in quite a warm climate, it won't actually flower again, it will just keep growing. It's the cold period that makes it flower again. If you do have a very hot summer and then you have quite a cold autumn, or quite a cold end of the summer, and then there's a warm spell in late autumn, you can have it starting to flower a bit later on, because if you have a very cold spell, it thinks it's winter, it starts producing flower buds, and then if you have a warm spell in November, December time, you can actually get a few flowers in late autumn. But generally, it won't flower again until spring. And that's basically how to look after it. Quite easy. As I say, don't feed it too much. But you can't really ever expect this to last very long, because they are really best as biennials, or maybe just 3 or 4 years of life. That's why we throw them out so easily, because they're so cheap to buy. We plant them, they grow, give us a good display, and then we want to put something else in the spot. So if you're wanting it as a bedding plant, it is best just to throw it out afterwards, to be honest. But if you plant it somewhere in the garden and you don't have any other plants you want to put there, and you're quite happy for it just to be a green kind of shrubby plant for the rest of the year but have a nice display in spring, then you might as well cut it back and make it into a perennial plant. So if you do keep it going, a bit of lime will help it because it likes quite alkaline soils. But as I said, it will never live very long, so after about 5 years you'll need to replace it anyway. And it's best not to plant wallflowers back or any brassicas into the soil, because if you keep growing brassicas again and again, you'll get diseases building up in the ground. So it's best to put them in a new place if you are going to grow these year after year. So I think that's about it for the wallflower. If you have any further questions, please just pop a comment in the comment section and I'll try and reply to all your comments as soon as I can.